Yeah, welcome to Body Wisdom Talks. Hello, Alicia. Hope you're doing well.
Good. Hello.
Hello. In today's episode, we want to explore a topic that is still sensitive for many of us, the impact of the corona years on our nervous systems. And we are not here to judge or to take sides, whether you were afraid of the virus or afraid of losing your bodily autonomy. Both experiences were real and both activated our nervous systems in deep ways. And we'll explore what it means when people feel unsafe, not just physically, but emotionally and socially, and how fear responses can lead to disconnection in the end. And most importantly, how we can come back into connection both with ourselves and with others. And through the lens of somatic mindfulness, trauma awareness, and nervous system understanding, we invite you into a space of compassion and curiosity. So here we are, and we were thinking a lot about this, right, Alicia? How to show how a lot of experiences were leading to the same experience or the same emotion or nervous system reaction in the end. And we were thinking about how could we look at this? Because there have been people who have been so afraid of the virus. Really, they felt so threatened. And there have been people who have been threatened by the way the vaccination was forced on them. And we wanted to talk a little bit about that. So I wonder, what do you think?
Yeah, actually, funny, Stephanie, we could probably start with the threat of the virus first,
Oh,
because I
yeah.
think it's the
Hmm.
first time really that the whole world was kind of attacked by a hidden threat. You know, you couldn't see it. It was like a hidden
Right.
virus.
Hmm.
And it's the
Hmm.
first time, it's almost like collective trauma for the whole world, that there was something, and it actually was like, it reminded me of one of those movies that you see where there was a threat coming, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the whole world was like, couldn't believe it. It started in China. And, you know, I remember about 2 weeks before thinking it'll never come here. And then slowly, slowly, you could just feel the whole media build for it.
Yeah.
And then it was like we were all in it together.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And I think for that, that was just the beginning, kind of just how that happened and how the fear, the global fear of a threat, which wasn't a person, which was a virus.
Right, right. That was the first time. I mean, there have been times like the Spanish flu, for example, was a bit similar, but not that worldwide as this one was. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you say because there was times before, but actually, I think what kind of compounded this was actually and created another threat was the media, because everybody was looking at the news. So if you're thinking of your nervous system, you're already in fight or flight, but you don't know what to do because you can't, it's hidden. You can't fight it because it's hidden and you can't really run from it. So therefore you're kind of stuck in this nervous system reaction. And then you hear the media constantly kind of revving that up. So it's almost like we're in threat, we can't do anything, and then we're looking at the media every day.
Right, and that for a long time, and they're making it a real big topic, and they're giving a lot of attention and a lot of threats in the news, and so that people would feel really uncomfortable and scared. I don't know how it was in Ireland. Here in Germany, it started very slowly. Like, first, it wasn't a threat. First, it was just a virus. Then we could see pictures from northern Italy where a lot of people suddenly died. Yeah, there were lots of threatening pictures going around suddenly. And then we had this one and only expert in Germany. His name is Christian Drosten, and he was all over the media. And on just maybe just him, maybe sometimes some other people, but most of the time it was just him. And over the time, he was telling different stories. So, like in the beginning, it wasn't that bad. Then suddenly it became really serious and bad. And there have been a lot of developments like this. First, it all was very harmless, and suddenly it was very dangerous. And that was really confusing to a lot of people. But as you said, when you get an instant input, a threatening input, it might reach you at one point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even just thinking about it now, it's almost like the enemy is approaching. I can even feel just just the imprint of it now, actually thinking about that because it was building, the fear was building and the anxiety about, first of all, not believing it, and then like this can't be true, and then you know, it just got progressively worse because I think there was a little bit in the media. It's kind of interesting how when you're afraid or somebody's attacking you, that actually it started to who should we blame? Whose fault is it? And then there was a lot of conspiracy theories. There's a lot about trying to blame China. And it was like, so it was
Mm.
building, building, and then the state got involved. And then that started happening that it was like on another level. And then the state was like, it was huge here because St. Patrick's Day was approaching and they shut it down, because it became, and that was another thing, like that was like a big red mark. Oh my God, the country's being shut down. The flights aren't going. So that was
Yeah.
another rev. That was like, you're already thinking, how's my nervous system? Is this kind of scared? Am I scared? What's going on? And what's happening in my
Yeah.
body. And then when that was another level that you're going, okay, this is a full-on attack.
Yes, especially when this kind of shutdown came, as you said. And I remember one day really when we weren't allowed to drive the car or to go out at all. Like just maybe to walk the dog. At
Yeah.
10 o'clock, you weren't allowed to walk, just to walk the dog, but otherwise you were not allowed to go outside at 10 o'clock until the morning. And you were not allowed to go by car somewhere to another city or something. And all of this was happened very suddenly from, oh, it's very harmless to suddenly, oh, it's very dangerous. And at one point, a lot of people started thinking some were just driven by their fear and getting more and more driven by their fear. The more they watched the news, the more they were driven by the fear. And other people started to think, like, how can it be that the virus at 10 o'clock is more active than at 9 o'clock, for example? Like asking like common sense questions. But it seems like when your nervous system is activated in a very strong way, like really you're really scared to death, then sometimes we have seen that in many situations when you're too scared. Sometimes your logical thinking might be even affected by your fear. And that can, of course, happen in all directions. And that's what we also wanted to talk about today. So there have been the people who have been so afraid of the virus. And I mean, I don't want to blame them or tell them this is not right or has been wrong. That's not what we want to talk about. We just want to say all of that was what was happening was having an impact on our nervous system. And there have been people who have been really affected by the news. And that was a difficult time for them, not knowing what will happen to them, especially when they started to tell it's really dangerous for older people, for people who have chronic diseases. And I think that was a big threat to them not knowing will this have a bad effect on me or not? Or am I going to die maybe on this? And questions like this, because that's what they were telling in the news, that you might probably die when you're,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think it's so interesting what you're saying because actually, the way you said that the brain shuts down, because when we're in threat, our nervous system responds, first of all, with our neocortex, which is to look for connection and to find safety in connection.
yeah,
And that was taken from us because, and the whole world didn't know this. I mean, maybe now they know, but if we can't find connection with others, because that was supposedly a problem, we actually then go into our reptilian brain, which is because we can't fight or flight. So therefore we go and we curl into our, freeze because our neocortex is not working. So we go back to the reptilian brain and we close in and we freeze. And I think that's what happened because normally we would find safety with others first.
yeah,
And also because I remember also a day when we were going for like everybody for our family, it was bringing the dog for a walk, even just going to the beach and being with nature was very healing and very soothing to the nervous
yeah.
system. And we were stopped by the police as well, that we could not go further. We had a 5 mile radius where we could go,
Oh,
actually for a few weeks. So we couldn't even bring the dog. And I found that very hard because who are we going to meet on the beach? You know what I
right.
mean? It wasn't even, it's not even a busy beach where we go. It's kind of in an industrial area and nobody else is there. And we were just getting some fresh air and something which is really healthy for our nervous system to kind of relax and soothe and attune to. And also it was that other layer of closing down. So I can't find safety and connection with others. I can't find safety in even getting out to nature. And somebody is kind of pressing on me and putting rules in, which can be very, which restrictive for people. So I found that
Definitely.
very hard for my nervous system, was like, I'm really frozen.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. That's so right. Because all of this fear created this long for structure, for clear rules, masks, and distancing, and also the vaccinations, of course.
Yes.
And
Next level. Yeah.
next level. And because all of these, that's what they've been told in the news, were offering a sense of control and in this chaotic thing that suddenly was going on in the world. Shall we talk a little bit about the other experience of the people who haven't had fear of the virus, but felt very bad about being forced to get vaccinated? What do you think was the effect on the nervous system of this experience, not being in fear of the virus, but of the vaccination?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the whole thing is really interesting when you look at from the nervous system because I think the world responded from very much a headspace and and it did what it did and it did all those lockdowns and all that because it
Yeah,
just is so it's so head driven and not somatically driven. So I think that's, no blame to anybody.
yeah,
It's a really good teaching lesson to reflect on it, especially somatically. So now I feel, yeah, it's almost like, okay, first of all, there's lockdowns and then there's a big scramble to fix it. Okay, let's get science and I'm not, let's get the vaccine, let's fix it. But actually, before we even do that, which is great, it we need to look at it's important to look at other ways that co-regulation is huge for actually soothing our nervous system and for creating safety, going out into nature, all of those were restricted. But then the next level was, okay, we found a vaccine which was developed very quickly, so there was a lot of unsurety about that in the whole world because you
yeah,
know and there was such a divide between those who said give it to me because and they were happy about taking it, and then those who didn't. And I
right,
think that was another nervous system response
right,
because that created division. So we were
right,
already in freeze, and then this very much was like you know more untrust with people, and it became really divisive and very very contentious, didn't it? And anxious.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it was having such an impact on families, on relationships, on working relationships. In so many terms, there was a lot of struggle and fights going on, who's right, who's wrong. That was so dividing and so destructive to the whole society. And I think a lot of marriages got divorced because of this, or many people lost their jobs just because having a different opinion. I always was wondering, how can this be that suddenly we cannot talk, like telling us our opinions and be just open to what somebody has to say, what drives them, what's your fear, what's my fear, just having an open, honest talk. And suddenly it wasn't possible anymore. And I think, as you explained before, that's because of the nervous system. When you come back to an old nervous system way, like the old reptilian brain and things like this, suddenly they are at work and they do the job. And it's when you're threatened to death, there's no conversation going on anymore. It's
Yeah.
just me or
Yeah.
you. That's all. And that's what it was. It was like a me or you. Both cannot be right. It can just be me or you. Otherwise, one will die here. And that's so powerful. This me or you thing that was really stopping all human conversation that we would usually have had in such a situation.
Yeah, which brings me to the importance of like the somatic part, because actually in science, scientifically, like when we were in so much threat. There was the virus, and then there was the lack of support, the lack of relationships, the lack of co-regulation, and then there was the division bit with those who supported the vaccine and those who didn't. What's the common denominator is fear. So fear was driving us. So therefore, our neocortex, we couldn't discuss it. We just were so reactive. So I think that's really interesting because when we're in that kind of reptilian fight or flight, it's a survival response. And there's no, you can't reach the head because, you think you're just in fear, you're just reacting. So, which is
Right.
really interesting to, from a somatic point of view, is to look at that because
Yeah.
it's not about right or wrong necessarily. It's
That's
about,
the point.
okay, how do I feel about taking the vaccine, or how do I feel somebody who takes the vaccine and is into it, that's great. But what's driving that is fear. And somebody who doesn't is the same thing. They fear of taking the vaccine. So can we look at the fear underneath that and the fear of the virus and maybe see where that lives in our body and give it a little and kind of play with it and hold it and work with it, process it, so that we can understand the other bit. It's almost like getting the neocortex back online, you know, that's been
That's well
kind of,
said.
which
Yeah.
is interesting because it's such an interest of mine is if I can't meet somebody with a different opinion, like how can we ever talk? How can there ever be peace, between two people? Because we're holding such beliefs and behind that is such fear. It's, can we delve underneath somatically to be able to listen? Because when
Right.
you're in that response, you can't listen. And I think that's what happened. There was just such a division between take the vaccine and those who don't. They couldn't
Right.
reach.
Right.
And
And
it wasn't
both,
their fault, I suppose.
yes, and both groups have been severely afraid of having strong health issues in the consequences, like getting infected with the virus, you might die, getting vaccinated, you might die. So this is a really strong and powerful threat in both ways.
Mhm.
And I think that's why the conversations have been loaded like this, like they have been. And that's why it was so destructive to the social life in common. The solution here, of course, like as you said, would be calming down your nervous system first before not go into this fear of death. But how do we do that? And maybe we can show a little bit of an exercise how it would look like to calm your nervous system down, even when it is strongly activated. And
Mhm.
there might not be just only one way, there might be a lot of ways how you could do that. But we would like to show one approach, maybe, right?
Yeah. Well, I'd love to do a little inquiry with you. Now, it
Yeah,
might be a little bit activating in memory of COVID, and uh, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it isn't activating for you, but it would be interesting to see.
yeah,
And then what
one,
we could do is bring a little bit of kindness. But I think it might be
um,
a situation that everybody during COVID had,
right.
no
Like, and
matter
that
what
was
their,
the mask
yes,
situation,
yes,
right? We
yes.
all had this, and that was so difficult, not knowing what's going on behind the mask, you know. You couldn't see face expressions, anything, just you just had to read from the eyes or if somebody started talking. But apart from that, there was a lot of disconnection going on because somehow you couldn't connect very well behind this mask. How would you do that? And maybe we go into this a little bit because I think
Yeah.
everyone had this. Yeah.
And actually, that's another very interesting thing because there was two layers. There was for
Mhm.
the vaccine and against the division, and
Yeah.
then there was another division which was for the mask and against the mask. And
Right. You're
I thought
right.
that was interesting because that was more divisive, and also there was such fear associated with that. And again, that was a massive other step in the co-regulation, because if you think of children, like if you're
Yeah.
masked, I think they
Oh, yeah.
will do studies on this. Like your child regulates from looking at you and seeing your facial, features and everything.
Yeah.
So so I'm sure that will have effect on people as well wearing the masks because it's very hard to co-regulate if you've got, it's very hard to see the
Yeah, not
face,
just
everything.
that. I mean, you don't get enough air probably,
Yes.
and I mean, some might have felt safe with a mask, and even if they don't get enough air, they felt comfortable with it because of protection. And others might have felt scared to death because suddenly they couldn't get enough oxygen, or yeah, what might have really felt very bad, and you might have felt dizziness. And I heard of people who even lost their senses and everything because they couldn't breathe properly. And so there have been a lot of effects on the nervous system in this
Yeah.
sense.
Actually, I was smiling there, not at what you're saying, because you just put your just put your name, you just put the word out there, which is so important, is safety. And I think that was it. Like when we look back on it, no matter what somebody believed or didn't believe, whether they wanted to wear the mask or not, it was
Yeah,
all about how did they feel safe.
right,
And I think
right.
that's what's coming back to with the nervous system. How can we help the nervous system feel safe?
Yeah, and that
And
was the
you know,
problem in Corona
yeah,
time, right? Because we had different approaches of how to feel safe.
yes.
One felt safe with vaccination and mask, and one felt safe without vaccination and without mask. And that's the point. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they both have absolutely right to feel what they feel because it is what it is. You cannot just tell somebody, no, you don't, you're not allowed to feel this. I don't want you to feel this. It's not working, right?
Yes, and I think as well around that, when you look at the way the world responded now from a somatic point of view, a nervous system point of view, you can see how we kind of all just reacted, the way that the mind right without the body piece. Because actually, to find safety for our nervous system, we first look to others and we co-regulate. And also, that could be the state as well for co-regulating bits. And that probably was taken from us. And also nature and going out into nature and feeling, our feet on the ground, so a lot of restrictions, which I think would be very interesting with all the science now and the neuroscience about the nervous system. It might be interesting to look at a different way that if that happened again, where we could find safety and learn from the past,
Absolutely.
somatically.
Very nice. Yeah, very nice. If you are looking for more information about Alicia or me, you can look down in the description and see if you can find anything interesting there.
That's it.
That's
Bye.
it? Okay. Bye.